Sure. Yep. It's starting to roll.
Still rolling.
Ah, shit!
Let me see here. Bring in the LED. Drop it down.
Okay, let's start with tracking.
Give me a grid.
Got it?
There. Target.
Check.
Target.
Check.
Now follow.
Check.
Voice stress analyzer. 1, 2, 3. Record. Now playback.
Bring it up 50%. Full frame.
Now playback.
Bring it up 50%.
Give me a full frame.
Got it. All right, clear out.
You're gonna be a bad motherfucker.
This guy is really good.
He's not a guy, he's a machine.
Thank you.
Sure. Anytime.
Oh, yeah. Go get him, boy.
Welcome to your uncensored home for World of Warcraft news and opinions. With your host, Berserker, this is Unshackled Fury.
Retooled, refreshed, and raring to go. The house that Rage built is back once again to bang and clang our way through the battlefield to see what treasures lie within. So welcome, one and all. I am your host, Berserker, and this is episode 96 of your uncensored home for World of Warcraft news and opinions, Unshackled Fury. On today's show, we're catching up on the fallout regarding the Activision Blizzard lawsuit and everything that's happened since last we were here, and then sorting out the kitchen sink full of measures being taken to address player concerns and what's shaping up to be patch 9.1.5. But first, where have I been? Where's the show been? It's been about 7 weeks since last we were here discussing the recently revealed Blizzard lawsuit that had been filed by the Department of Fair Employment and Housing here in California, and talked about all of the misdeeds that happened at the House of Blizzard, Activision Blizzard, all the crazy things going on there. The initial reactions and events that followed that. The last episode I put out was only a few days, 4 or 5 days after all of this became public. So we were still very much in the early stages, and holy shit, did a lot come out after that. So the first part about this is I took a break simply because, like we did last summer, Nav and I wanted to take a break to let the voices that needed to be heard, to have the space that they needed, not to clog up people's feeds with my nonsense. I don't do a whole lot of the twittering that some people do, but I'm on there doing my usual nonsense, and really the time and place for it, I thought, to also be jumping in and opining. And, I have almost no sway or pull, even though I'm an influencer. Not really. But I didn't want to jump into anything. I didn't want to interfere with anything. I wanted to let that take its course and let the people who needed to get their voices out. I tried to, signal boost as much as I could. But that was the initial and primary reason why this show had been on a bit of a hiatus. The other big thing is, quite frankly, I think that I, like a lot of people, been having a very hard time around this world. With all of the stories coming out, it was really hard to read. And the image that I think all of us, not all of us maybe, but a lot of us held of Blizzard had just been tarnished 100 times over, 1,000 times over. And seeing these truly horrific events unfold, it was hard. It was hard to watch. So the whole scandal around that really, I think, took its toll. And for me personally, it's been a difficult time. I think, like a lot of folks, right? We're dealing with a pandemic on top of this stuff. I mean, we're dealing with other global events. I'd be lying if I said that the loss of my co-host hasn't taken a bit of a toll on me. It's a bit of a transition going back to a one-person show, and that's been a challenge in its own right. Brother Nav, I do miss Brother Nav being here, but of course support him in his choices and what he's doing. So that's taken. I'd be lying if I didn't, say that it's taken a little bit of a toll. Just being around social media and the game, and everything else that's been going on. I just needed to clear my head. And to be honest, I took a bit of a social media cleanser, I think they call it, and I didn't really look at much. I didn't engage very much because, frankly, I just needed the break, the mental space. I literally went to a cabin in the woods to commune with nature and to be with my family. I got a whole day out of that until, and I don't know if you've heard, but California's been burned to a cinder about 3 times over just so far this year. And one of those fires started getting kind of close, and there was smoke everywhere. It was the worst I've ever seen it. If you follow AQI readings, at one point we had an AQI reading of about 700 where I was. So it was pretty fucking bad. So I did not get a whole lot of communing time, communal time, nature time. But I did try to do that. So all of these things, right, to try to get myself in a better mental space to be able to come back and, frankly, enjoy the things that I enjoy, and to be able to come back here and talk about all the crazy stuff that's been going on here. Because it does feel like a lot of us are just holding on. This is a real inflection point for World of Warcraft, for Activision Blizzard, for a lot of us that play, a lot of us that do content creation. We've seen already some pretty big shows and some pretty big personalities either disappear completely or change course. I think I talked about on the last time. We have Roe ending Rolling Restart and kind of stepping back from what he was doing there with all of the Blizzard and Warcraft stuff. Morally Grey podcast, I know that one's gone. Scrubs vs. the World, that one's gone. Azeroth Roundtable, that one's gone. The Instance has changed format. All Things Azeroth may not be coming back. There's a lot of change. And I've never seen anything like it. I don't know that anyone else has around this community either. So from that perspective, it feels like there's just this tension that still exists, and it's hard to navigate at times. It's hard to know what to make of it. We're at this strange inflection point, and it's also this confluence of ideas, of ideals, and of misdeeds. And what I mean by that is, on one hand, we have Blizzard, where Blizzard has had the curtain pulled back, and now we've seen the true face, or at least a good chunk of the face behind what's been going on. And now we're seeing all of the things that happened, and that has put a very sour taste in our mouths. The other side of that, though, is player base obsession. And the negative and overwhelmingly loud voices of the negative individuals in our community who I think have caused great damage of their own. And I know this is going to sound crazy because this is a World of Warcraft podcast. And I don't know how many Warcraft podcasts you're going to hear Oscar Wilde be referenced or read, but here we are. What this made me think of is that there is a very famous piece by Oscar Wilde, The Ballad of Reading Gaol. And in it, he talks about how we kill the things we love. And the sort of relevant piece is this. Yet each man kills the thing he loves. By each let this be heard. Some do it with a bitter look. Some with a flattering word. The coward does it with a kiss. The brave man with a sword. Some kill their love when they are young, and some when they are old. Some strangle with the hands of lust, some with the hands of gold. The kindest use a knife, because the dead so soon grow cold. Some love too little, some too long, some sell and others buy. Some do the deed with many tears, and some without a sigh. For each man kills the thing he loves, yet each man does not die. We have a responsibility in this community, as players, as content creators, whatever our piece of this is, to uphold an end where we are not just a constant source of negativity. Bitching, moaning, whining, complaining. There are certain quadrants that just are relentless and unending. And for me, for what I've seen, the combination of that, which has always been around to a degree, combination of that with all of the things that have come out about Activision Blizzard has really just taken its toll. And that last part there, about our part of this, I think that leads me more into the 9.1.5 discussion I want to have a little bit later. But for now, coming back, taking a break, started working back into social media, started working back into Warcraft. And the thing that's helped a lot is my raid team, my guild. It's been a source of pride at times, a source of consternation at times. I think anytime you're part of a leadership or running something, you'll have your problems. But raiding with my team, and this raid in particular, which I think is a great raid, has helped bring me back in and keeps me vested in what's happening. And that can't be the sole reason why you do a thing. I don't think that's healthy. You have to enjoy the game for what it is. And coming back and seeing these pieces again, I'm starting to feel that warmth again, that love again. And that's something that I had hoped would happen after taking a little bit of a cleanser, a little bit of a break. And that's coming. And I do believe that step by step, we can rebuild this thing. Will it be what it was in the past? It probably shouldn't be. We are entering, I think, a new phase in the life cycle of World of Warcraft and our participation in that. But I've taken a break. Felt it was a good break. Coming back now, want to talk about not just where we were, but where we're going. So with all of that said, why don't we go ahead and jump into our news? So like I mentioned, the last time we were here, it was all Activision Blizzard all the time. Everything that had happened with the lawsuit up to that point, the fact that it had been filed, the terrible things that we found out about. But lots of things have happened since. So there's been so much, and it's impossible to really go into all of it. I've got a handy timeline here of events that I want to go through just to kind of catch everybody up to speed. Some of this I feel may have been forgotten about already because it feels like every month is a lifetime now in this coronavirus, COVID, pandemic era that we live in. But I think it's important to remember where this has gone so far in order to also help us continue to promote what we need to promote and help where we need to help going forward. So going back, the original Department of Fair Employment and Housing lawsuit was filed on July the 20th of this year. We became aware of that the next day. Blizzard put out their official statement, which I don't think any of us thought was a good one. J. Allen Brack came out and said his piece. Later we had Fran Townsend and her terrible defense of everything. That was not good. Mike Morhaime had a statement. Metzen had a statement. They apologized. So we had those kinds of initial stabs at everything first, and just confusion, upset, all of that. Since that time, since that last episode, starting with late July, 26th of July, there was an all-hands meeting of Activision Blizzard. Reportedly, there were only a few hundred people that were able to get into this all-hands meeting, so it sounded like it was chaotic to a certain degree, but it was a call meant to address the lawsuit where they reiterated zero tolerance. Activision Blizzard, we have zero tolerance for this kind of behavior. There was some pushback on the statement by Fran Townsend, where she had said, it's not what I've experienced, and yada, yada, yada. And so there was some pushback on that. There was also an open letter that was signed by more than 1,000 past and present employees. And if it's the same letter, I don't know, I'm not quite clear if this is the same one or a different one. There's been a few, I think. But that may be over 3,000 now. So there's a healthy level of support and people speaking out on this. So this letter sent out standing against this statement by Fran Townsend. The next day is when the employee walkout was announced. And with that walkout that happened on the 28th, there were 4 demands that were provided by the employees to the executive management at Activision Blizzard. Those demands are these right here. 1, an end to mandatory arbitration in employee contracts. 2, more diverse recruiting and hiring practices. 3, publication of compensation data, promotion rates, and salary ranges. 4, a company-wide diversity, equity, and inclusion task force empowered to hire a third-party company to audit Activision Blizzard. So those are the 4 demands that were issued by the employees that day. Demands which, as far as I'm aware to this day, have not been even addressed. Certainly haven't been met, but I don't even believe they've been addressed. Because, of course, to address them is to give them validity, I suppose. So that's why they're like, yeah, we just are pretending you don't exist. Aha! More of the same. Good work. Bobby Kotick, on this same day, the 27th of July, wrote to the employees. So now Bobby Kotick comes in, certainly a target by many, being that he is the head honcho. And the buck should stop with him. And I think there's been a litany of problems with Mr. Kotick over the years, and people have spoken out against him for as long as I can remember. He's still there, and there doesn't seem to be any sign of him going anywhere. But he wrote an open letter or a note to his employees that day, also noting, initial reactions to the situation were tone deaf, that they will be taking swift action including termination of anyone found to be, I guess, getting in the way of justice. Also on that same day, it was announced that references to Alex Afrasiabi going to be removed from World of Warcraft, which I think Lord Marshal, Field Marshal Afrasiabi out in Stormwind, right there at the front gate. Yeah, that was there was a few day period there where that NPC was getting savaged, probably rightfully so. And that has since been changed, and they'll be going through and making changes to, I suppose, any reference to Alex Afrasiabi, as we talked about last time. He was at one time a very high up creative person that was at Blizzard, and he was let go, and horrible stories about that guy and being just a disgusting piece of shit. So they announced that they were going to be removing references to him. So the next day, this is all within the few day span. So on the 28th of July, employee walkout happens, and so that was, by all accounts, from what I saw, very successful. There were numerous employees, and I understand that they were not punished directly initially for being out there. Some of the stories since seem to be that some people were getting targeted after the fact to talk to management, and I'll get to something about that later as to why that's not exactly what it might seem. But a successful walkout, it seemed. It had a lot of high rate of participation, industry-wide support, and, you know, it's something that has been an effective tool in the past when it comes to labor issues. You know, there's lots of talk, has been for a long time, about unionizing of these employees, and this is the kind of thing that starts to lead you down that road. I don't know how successful they will be with that right now, but that is where they are looking to go. So on the day that the walkout happens, Kotaku publishes an article about the infamous Cosby Suite. Now, if you recall, in the lawsuit, they had referenced it was misspelled as the Crosby Suite, but the Cosby Suite, where, and there's some discussion about this. There's some potential misunderstanding, so I'm just relaying what I've seen here, and I'll have my own opinion. But there was a picture that was published. So we heard about this Cosby Suite and drinking and, you know, inappropriate activity, that kind of stuff. And so a picture was posted of several staff, high-level staff of Blizzard, holding this picture of Bill Cosby on the bed of this suite, this infamous suite. There were chat logs that were posted, pictures, and all kinds of things. And some of the people identified in this photo include Alex Afrasiabi, Greg Street, you know, Ghostcrawler, who went over to Riot, I believe, Dave Cossack, who was with Warcraft and with Hearthstone, and now he's gone over to some smaller developer, Jesse McCree, who was a long-time Blizzard dev, bounced around to a few different games, most recently, I believe, Diablo 4. Josh Mosquera, who was the former lead, I believe, of Diablo, and he went off to another place. Corey Stockton, Mumper, remember him? Well, his Twitter seems to be either gone or he did something to it, because when I looked for it the other day, it was nowhere to be found. So, not sure what's going on with that guy, but there seems to be something happening. There were also a few other people I may have left out. I can't quite remember. But it was also another one of those holy shit moments. Greg Street posted a few things on Twitter trying to explain himself and the situation. I even saw Kat Metzen at one point, Chris Metzen's wife, kind of defending this a little bit, saying that if you look at the timeline, when this happened, I think it was 2013, was before the Cosby stuff became public, which was 2014. Now, I haven't gone back and looked to see how exactly all this timeline matches up. That's their assertion, is that the photo that they had was some like swap meet photo, and it was the ugly sweater and it matched the carpet in the suite or some shit. In either case, whatever you call it, it doesn't sound like there was a lot of appropriate things happening for people at that level. Don't get me wrong. I've been to BlizzCon, been drunk off my ass, had a good time. I'm not saying there's not a place for that, because we did have a good time, but unfortunately, people do get inappropriate. And especially when you're a boss, when you're way high up at some company, it's probably not a good idea for you to be inviting junior level folks up to a suite where there's just endless booze and fucking around, possibly quite literally. Not the best idea. So this Kotaku article comes out with all of this issue. They also confirm in that article that Afrasiabi was fired for misconduct. On this show, we had talked about some time ago about how it looked like he had been missing. Like his LinkedIn had changed, but there was no announcement. So it just seemed kind of hinky that here is one of their top guys. He just happens to be gone, so it seems, but there's no announcement. That doesn't sound too great. So that was the 28th of July. The 29th of July. New York Times has an investigative article that comes out corroborating more stories of discrimination and harassment. About that same time, end of July, we had the creation of something called a Better ABK. This is on Twitter, and this is sort of a conglomeration, I will say, of employees of Activision Blizzard King. That's what the ABK, a Better ABK. If you want to follow them on Twitter, it's at a Better ABK, all one thing. And this is essentially the, I don't know, spokesperson, spokes account. I don't know. There's probably a better word for this. Of the employees involved in all of these activities, the walkouts, the demands, all of that. That account comes out about, I think their first tweet was about the 30th of July. And this, if you haven't followed them, I think is a really good sort of account to follow, to give you, if you go through their timeline, sort of the running of events that have occurred up to this point. It's, I think, probably where we're going to hear more in the future about certain activities, what's going on, what we need to be paying attention to in regards to what's happening with the lawsuit, whether the employee demands are being met or not, all of that. So if you haven't followed a Better ABK, now's a good time to do that. So that was about the end of July-ish. Right after that, now we're in August, 1st of August, our buddy Fran Townsend comes back and she tweets out an article basically shitting on whistleblowing, which is like the most naked way possible that you could say that your employees are a bunch of dick faces without saying it on Twitter, because you're human garbage. And so people start coming for Fran right away, as is appropriate. And what does she do? She starts blocking anyone that's coming after her, including employees. So that's a real good look. So Fran continuing to Fran. Then we get to the next day, August the 2nd. T-Mobile drops their sponsorship of both the Overwatch and Call of Duty leagues. Since T-Mobile has dropped them, several other sponsors have dropped both these leagues. That certainly calls into question everything that's going on, how long any of this stuff is going to continue. Because one of the things that really surprised me about the Overwatch League when it first fired up is how much money runs through there. Now, when they first announced the San Francisco Shock and they were like, we're looking for partners, I'm like, well, shit, I got some money. I'll throw it down. I'll be like a little tiny minority partner. Oh, no. I did not have the kind of scratch that they were looking for. It was like a minimum 6-figure buy-in, and I was like, nah, that's cool. So when you have even an esports league that's running Overwatch. He asked my dad what Overwatch is. He's like, I don't know. Overwatch, even still, as a decent sized esports league, you still need lots of sponsors. And when you have your primary sponsors dropping out, ooh, that's not good. But let us get to the next day, August 3rd, 2021. That is the day that most of us figured was coming when news of this broke, almost within 1 second of thinking about this. J. Allen Brack is out, replaced by two people, Jen O'Neill and Mike Ibarra. Now, a quick note about them. They both seem pretty legit. I'll just say right out of the gate. Jen O'Neill, she came over from Vicarious Visions, a company that we've talked about on here before, a developer that I actually saw a part of Guitar Hero. If you remember Guitar Hero back in the day, and Lord I do, because I just played it with my son the other day, and it still kicks ass. Rommel, gonna need a showdown at some point. She came over from Vicarious Visions, and there was an article about her that came out not too long after this, and it painted her in a very good light, and definitely gave me some hope that she would help take things in a good direction. Mike Ibarra, people are hounding Mike because apparently he's a pretty high-level Warcraft player, has stuff online that you can track in terms of, I want to say Mythic Plus times or something like that. And folks are reaching out to him on Twitter and trying to get ideas across, and he's been fairly communicative, I think. But also saying, listen, I don't make Warcraft decisions. That's up to the team. That's up to Mr. Hazakostas. So that was something. At the same time, we also found out that the head of HR at Blizzard, Jesse Meschuk, was out. I think that person had already left earlier in the year. I want to say sometime around April. But no surprise there. Also that day, so J. Allen Brack is out. Head of HR, we confirm that they are out. The employees of Blizzard released a statement rejecting Activision Blizzard's choice of law firm Wilmer-Hale to review its policies. So one of the things that Activision Blizzard has done is they have hired their own sort of outside counsel to come in and review their policies related to all of the issues that we've discussed: harassment, discrimination, pay, all of those things. And unfortunately, Wilmer-Hale has a history of union busting, or something to that degree. So the demands, again, of the employees wanting to hire or select a third party, that's kind of being trampled on pretty boldly, I think, right there. So Wilmer-Hale being hired, being brought in, and a statement is released by the employees, essentially rejecting that choice. And you may have also seen the hashtag and other statements on Twitter: I reject Activision Blizzard's choice of Wilmer-Hale, those kinds of things. A few days later, Jason Schreier finally jumps into the fray. Jason Schreier, longtime reporter on the gaming scene. He was over at Kotaku, now he's over at Bloomberg. And he published a pretty lengthy and detailed report about the things that had happened at Activision Blizzard up to that point, going back into history, talking with folks, more employees coming forward with disturbing stories about behavior that had happened in their time, harassment, hazing. You hear about these cube crawls where people are, going from cube to cube, getting hammered on. It's getting drunk, getting harassed. It's pretty bad shit. He also talked about in that article, going back to kind of how this all ties in with the failure, and they call it just, it's outright failure, Warcraft 3 Reforged. Remember when they brought that up, and that was supposed to have a pretty robust development, and they wanted to do all these things? Well, it turns out that there were just bad decision after bad decision after bad decision being made, and that's why the game has a terrible rating, and it's not supported in the way it was supposed to be supported, and it didn't have all the new shit that we thought it was going to have. It was just terrible. So Jason Schreier putting out that article, all of these things, again, coming out of the woodwork about all of the terrible treatment that employees have received. going another week later. This is now August 11th. Diablo 4 director Luis Barriga fired. Longtime Blizzard employee and dev Jesse McCree fired. Crafticus, World of Warcraft dev, famous for all of our little puzzles and crazy shit on there, fired. Don't know that we have a lot of detail. But these individuals, well known, and they are out. This also leads to another question about the naming of folks, because Jesse McCree, as you recall in Overwatch, there is a character named McCree. There's a place in Warcraft, Makari, it's over in Argus. Lots of other references to this person. Now what do you do? Well, it takes a couple weeks, but on the 26th of August, there's an announcement that all references to McCree are going to be renamed. So the Overwatch character, I think the place in Argus already has another name, or it's getting another name. So we're seeing some of these changes. Some of these naming changes are happening in real time. I think some of them are happening potentially further down the road. But they also made an announcement that they will not be naming things after real life people, which I get, but I'm also a little bummed. You know, one day I'd hope to reach the ranks of somebody who had, you know, like a helm or shoulders or something named after them. You know, Berserker's Raging Spiked Shoulders or something. That would have been cool. But I get it. You never know. I might go off and do something crazy, and then they're stuck, and then they got to rename them to, you know, Gray Shoulder number 5. You know, nobody wants that. So that's, I think, a pretty robust rundown, as much as I can give, about what's been happening. There's been a lot, and within each of those articles and stories, there are some more truly heinous tales of treatment that people have received while employed at Activision Blizzard. And I encourage anyone that sees these to give them a signal boost, to share and get the word out about what's happened to them, because it's, well, I can't say it is because I don't know. I've never done it. I can only imagine how hard it must be to share these deeply personal stories. And there's some, I mean, really gnarly shit out there about the way that people have been, in some cases, sexually abused. I mean, that is, to me, that's about as bad as it gets. And then to come out and share that in a public space where literally millions of people can read it, that's hard. I can only imagine how hard that is. So when you see those things, please give them a boost, give them your support, because that's I think tougher than most anything I can imagine me doing anywhere. So here's where we are. The fight continues, right? We're trying to help folks the best we can, to support the causes that we can. Like I said earlier, I believe that the demands of the employees have gone unaddressed, so we need to call on the board members. Really, it's the board members. And this might be something that is, and Athelis, I still hear you. This is something that might be a bit of a foreign concept for folks about how Activision Blizzard is run by a board. And so the board members are people that you can write to, contact. I think there's only a couple of them on Twitter, but you can tweet at them and, respectfully give them a piece of your mind and tell them they need to address these issues. There are some tricks that are clearly being played by the Activision Blizzard lawyers, which I assume, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier about how people that participated in the walkout, it seemed to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, folks, that some folks were being called in and asked to come and share their concerns with the Blizzard attorneys. And here's kind of the dirty trick that they're trying on this one, is that the way that they're trying to shield themselves, if I understand this correctly, is that if you share or provide information to the Blizzard attorneys, that they are trying to shield that information behind attorney-client privilege. So at that point, if you share something with them, I think they're asking people or requiring or demanding people to sign, non-disclosure agreements. And so that blunts the ability for DFEH to continue their investigation because they go, well, you can't talk to so-and-so. They already talked to us, and, you know, that's protected. So a slick move for sure to try to wrap up all these people and then try to get it so they have DFEH has nobody left to talk to, or at least less people to talk to, fewer people to talk to. We may see that this lawsuit ends up getting settled. One of the things in the lawsuit that is mentioned is that DFEH filed the lawsuit because Activision Blizzard was not responding to or showing up to mediations. And so this may have all been an attempt, honestly, to try to just get them to a mediation, to try to get them to settle, you know, which comes with hopefully monetary damages, which go to the employees, you know, requirements that they do certain things or change. So that may be something that we see as some sort of settlements coming up. And, you know, in mentioning the board members, you know, obviously the shareholders are the big thing. And we do talk about the share price, the stock price here on this podcast. And you can clearly see that the stock price of Activision Blizzard has been dropping significantly. At one point earlier in the year, it was, you know, 103, 104 dollars per share. It is now below 80, and it hasn't been this low in some time, at least a year. So it is having an effect. The things that people are doing, I think, are having effect. I think that their attention is being paid to the right places. So we got to keep up the fight. We got to let people know what's happened is not appropriate. We need change. We need visible, viable, tangible change. We need to support these employees because I don't know about you folks, but I have a hard time, and we're all guilty of it. I don't, at this point, in the way that the world works, you're going to be a consumer in a way that you are going to go against your own values in some way. You order from Amazon, well, that's a whole host of issues. You order from Apple, there's a whole host of issues. You order from Nike, there's a whole host of issues. You order from anything, there's almost something with everything. So with gaming, right, we have an opportunity here, I think, to try to help create a better culture for this pastime, this hobby that we love, and the people who bring it to us. And if we can continue to do that, we should. So keep up the fight, folks. Good luck out there, and try to support them in every way that you can as we move forward. So moving forward, we have patch 9.1.5 on the horizon. Recently announced. It seems to be, I'm just calling it the kitchen sink. Perhaps it's the please don't leave us patch. There's no doubt in my mind that, what do they call it? Not participation, but engagement numbers have to be way down. So at this point, we now have patch 9.1.5 on the horizon. It's out on the beta, I believe. And it is coming with just an entire wish list of shit that people have been asking for and demanding, some more nicely than others, since time immemorial, it feels. And one of those things, I'm going to run down a few. I'm going to run down a few of these things. But as I raged about at one point, and Nav and I talked about extensively earlier on in the life cycle of Shadowlands, Covenant swapping will now be a more regular thing. The ripcord has been pulled. And they're couching this in a way that the storyline now allows for it, because all of the Covenants are working together. And yeah, okay, all right, I'll take it, you know. But clearly, this is something that is in response to the pretty loud demands of people since this all got announced, that Covenant swapping be something that is not too torturous to do, something that you can, do pretty much at will. There's going to be some requirements for it. I think you have to be max renown or somewhere pretty high, but you'll be able to switch Covenants. And the people rejoice throughout the land that this is finally a thing. Now, I don't know that I'm going to swap. I'm still curious to see the other storylines. I still want to see what happens in these other covenants, because, yeah, it's a little confusing at certain points when you jump in and you're like, who? Who is this? What's happening? But one of the other things that they're doing is they're going to allow you to skip the whole Maw intro deal. And that might get me in. That might get the alts fired up. That might see the Death Knight and the Paladin and a Druid get in there to see some of this stuff, because I know that alone was a huge problem for a lot of people. And this is something that we hear seemingly every expansion is, what are we doing with alts, alt friendliness? So we're going to be able to do not just an alt skip for the Maw intro. There's also going to be a Covenant campaign skip, where if you have already completed the Covenant campaign, you'll be able to skip, I believe, that on an alt. Again, a lot of this is going to depend on renown or specific places in quest completion. They're also going to be lifting the cosmetic locks. So I said here, once you've reached a high renown threshold, you will thereafter be able to freely switch among any of the 4 covenants without cooldown or restriction, as well as use cosmetic rewards that you have earned from one covenant, even if you are currently a member of a different one. So both of the covenant switching and the use of cosmetic rewards will also apply to alts once the renown threshold is reached on one character. So again, trying to open that up. There'll be an item that you can even buy for your alts to get them 40 renown, get a catch-up mechanic there. They're going to be removing conduit energy, which, listen, I'm not a high enough level player for that to matter, but I've seen a lot of conversation about it with high level players and how that was limiting, let's say. So they made the case. Those folks should be happy. The AoE cap. So there's a cap currently on how much damage you can do to, a variety of mobs around you. Well, that is being lifted. Right now, I believe it's 5. You can do damage to like 5 extra targets. Well, they're gonna lift that so you can damage more than that. However, I think it's the number. So for if you have, let's say 5 and let's say 8, well, those extra 3 are gonna have reduced damage. So they're still gonna get damaged. Your numbers are gonna go up, folks. If you're blowing AoE shit like I am, that is not a bad thing. I wasn't, hanging my hat on it, but that'll be pretty nice, and hopefully that'll mean some quicker clears in some of the fights that we've got in this very excellent raid. And I'll talk about the raid and story and all that stuff on the next episode. There's just not enough time for that right now, but I am very much loving the raid, so that'll be fun as we progress. The character customizations are once again getting an update, and I don't think, again, that this was intended. But Nightborn, Lightforged Draenei, Void Elves, and High Mountain Tauren, they're all getting extra stuff. I think there's some hairstyles, jewelry, horns. There might be something about tattoos somewhere. All kinds of stuff. So if you like playing one of them, good for you. I'm still waiting for my human heritage armor, which I guess we just had so much of it in the game. There is a rumor based on data mining that the Mage Tower may be returning. I don't have a whole lot of details on that because I typically try to stay out of the data mining to a certain degree, but it's possible that the Mage Tower will return. If you don't recall, this was a solo thing that you could run where you went in to try to get artifact weapon appearances by completing these challenges, and they were tough for me. I know some people blew right through them. I had a hard time with it. I think I only got one on time, but it's tough. There's no fucking around on that one. They also announced, speaking of Legion, that there's going to be Mythic Plus in Legion time walking. people are really excited about this. I've probably seen more chatter about this than anything that's being announced for 9.1.5, and I have no idea why. Because I don't do Mythic Plus. So I'm happy that you're happy. That's what I'm saying about that. What I do like, because I do like this solo business, Island Expeditions will finally be soloable, or at least you can solo queue. And that is something that I really felt like I missed out on BFA. Because there were there was all kinds of mounts and special shit that were locked in there. And I didn't really do the Island Expeditions because I don't like just randomly queuing with other folks. And I know, it makes me a bad MMO player. I know, listen, I'm not perfect either. But I like running shit by myself. And maybe that's, maybe I'm part of the problem. Maybe not. Island Expeditions. You get to solo queue. Get out there. Get some mounts. Get some pets. Get some toys. Get some transball. Let it rip. They're going to be doing some legacy raid tuning and other adjustments, including loot rules. They're going to go and change some of the BFA legacy loot rules so that way the encounters will drop the number of items that they would normally drop in either a 5-player dungeon or 20-player raid. Back to current times, legendaries will be able to be recycled. And I'm pretty happy about that because those do take a lot of juice to put together and a lot of time spent in Torghast, especially for Soul Ash. So you'll be able to get a full refund on all the Soul Ash and all the Soul Cinders that you've spent to create your legendary. That also seems like a pretty big give to the more casual amongst us. So I do appreciate that. And that does afford an opportunity to try some different things about being so worried about, oh shit, I only have so much time. I really got to go for this or this. This kind of opens things up more because if it's one thing I've noticed about this current artifact system is that there's so many different ones that you can choose from. It does beg for the opportunity to try them without being just completely derailed when you're trying to, blow up some meters in a raid. So hopefully that encourages a little bit more exploration there. I don't know how much of it I'll be doing, but I definitely have at least 2 or 3 on my mind I'd like to see in my raid until I once again drop to the bottom of the meters, get yelled at, and then have to go back to something that is good. One of the big changes, speaking of Torghast, is that I believe they're going to let you level through Torghast. Here's the statement that they made is, a variety of improvements will be introduced in support of a smoother experience leveling alternate characters through Shadowlands, such as an additional rank of heirloom upgrades and improvements to Threads of Fate, such as the addition of Torghast as an option, and renown gains for completing bonus objectives. So for Torghast, gone back and forth on Torghast. Anybody's listening to the show knows this. Love-hate relationship. I want to love it. I've loved it more recently. Trying to blow through some alts. That might be good for me in terms of not having to recycle content. I can just throw on some tunes, jam through Torghast for a while and level up. That might not be a bad idea because then I can just run through the campaign quests later for the covenants I want to see. Not a bad idea. Outside of that, there's also some other PvP stuff. Talk to the PvP folks. I don't know anything about that. And, of course, there'll be all kinds of other mounts and pets and toys and all kinds of stuff. So what do I think about this? Well, I think it's good, but with a bit of a caveat. It's clear that the team, the design folks, the leadership of World of Warcraft sense that something has to change. Engagement numbers have to be down. The narrative just generally around the company and the game is shit. So they have to do something. So why not have basically a patch take the form of a loot pinata? Why not? Give everybody what they want. Give me a headbutt. That's what I want. I've been asking for this for years as an interrupt. Give me a headbutt. You know, bring back Varian. What else? Oh, let me wield Shadow or Frostborn. Dual wield Frostborn. Yeah, I want to do that. Yeah, I'll try to think of a few more. I'll have to send them in on Twitter. But it very much feels like this is the thing. Is that please don't leave us. Please come back. And we're gonna do all these things. We're gonna pull the ripcord. We're gonna make it more alt friendly. We're gonna let you level through Torghast. On one hand, I think it is a good thing to give people what they want, so they continue to bring vibrancy into this game. Because if it's one thing I know, is that people play this game differently. Different people play this game differently. As an example of that, I want to tell you about a friend of mine. A friend of mine, his name is Slick Rock. You ever come across Slick? He can be a bit of a salty character from time to time. And you check him out on Twitter, or if you're on our raid team, you know, he's our lovable grump at times. But there is nobody that I know who knows more about shit that's going on than he does. There's nobody I know that's more invested in what we're doing than he is. Now, do he and I look at this game in two very different ways? Oh, you're damn right. We look at it in very different ways. But that's a good thing. And I think we're at a point now where there are a lot of things that I wasn't quite sure, for me, they were right moves for the game. Or maybe people like Slick have been pining for these things. And now they're going to get them. That's not a bad thing. We got to bring more people in. But here's the catch. I go back to what I said at the beginning about killing the things that we love. When we obsess over a thing, when we beat a thing into the dirt, eventually we tire of this thing. We lose our love of this thing. We find other things that bring us the pleasure that thing once did. Final Fantasy XIV. So we have to be careful about how much we focus on a thing and go after it and beat it to death. Because on one hand, being that knowledgeable and wanting those things, it's good for the game because I think we help keep it on track. I think player feedback is a good thing. But on the other hand, if they start giving in too much, I think people will continue to ratchet it up in an inappropriate way. And that's the line. And I think we have to be careful. This is a good stopgap, giving some folks things to keep them excited, bring them back in, try some things they haven't had before. Alt-friendly, get some more alts, that's more playtime, that's more engagement. Hopefully the dev team has learned some fucking lessons. You know, we talk about this a lot around our community, about systems that nobody wants, about things that people are tired of. Well, I'm not the biggest objector to a lot of these things, but I recognize that I might not be in the majority on this one. And hopefully the dev team is learning some important lessons about what to do in the future. We see this cycle a lot. Something gets put out, you know, the 0.0 patch, and then the 0.1 patch kind of does some things, and then the 0.15, and then finally we get the 0.225, and then by then they're fixing the shit that people wanted in the 0 patch fixed. Maybe we can start accelerating that timeline so that way people are happier up front, and that would be good. We can find a better balance point. So in the end, for all this, at this point in time, I feel hopeful, and I know that's a dangerous thing, but sometimes I think it's the best of things. Because I do believe that it's true that without hope you have nothing. And for us, people around this game, who've spent so much time here, I'm not ready to give it up, and I'm certainly not going to give it up without a fight. think we continue to support the people that need support, provide good feedback, responsible feedback. And I think that we can usher in, we can help usher in what way we can. Whatever this next age of World of Warcraft is going to be. I don't think it's going anywhere. You know, we've seen these leaks that it's going to get, you know, put on the back burner or whatever, you know. There's a term for it and I can't recall. I'm sorry. You know, it's in maintenance mode. That's it. I don't think that's the future. But there is another stage coming. And we can be a part of that if we choose to be. We can be a good part of that if we choose to be. So, we'll keep our eyes on the horizon. We'll keep loving this thing in a good way. And hopefully, wrongs will be righted. Ships will get on the right course. Pick your term, whatever it may be. And hopefully we'll have some better things to talk about down the road. All right. I think that will do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, you can always follow me and this show on Twitter at Berserker Rage and Unshackled_Fury. And you can join our Discord, links for which are in the profile of the show on Twitter and on the Warcraft Radio directory. Feel free to contact the show with your questions, comments, or otherwise by going to unshackledfury.com. And you can find this show wherever you get your podcasts. So once again, thank you for listening. Remember to keep your swords wet and your banners high. And we'll see you next time. Farewell.